Well, welcome to Stump the Pastor. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who submitted questions this past week. My Facebook page kind of lit up. You have given me enough material now to work with for about 2 months. So I wanted to let you know that I will get to all of them, and I will let you know when we are talking about the question you submitted. For today, we have a question from Dar. She's a longtime friend of mine from Dallas who now lives in Virginia. And she asked, how do you feel about Jesus basically calling the Canaanite woman a dog? Well, thank you, Dar. I appreciate your participation in these videos. And for those of you who are not familiar with the story Dar is referring to, it is found in 2 places in the New Testament, including the Gospel of Matthew and Mark. In the Matthew's Gospel, it's right before the feeding of the 4,000. So it was a lectionary reading recently, so you might have heard this one read in worship. But here is the scripture story. A Canaanite woman from the vicinity came to Jesus crying out, "Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession." Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, because she keeps crying after all of us." Jesus answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." When the woman came and knelt before him, she said, "Lord, help me." And he replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." "Yes, Lord," she said, "but even the dogs get the crumbs that fall from their master's table." And then Jesus answered, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted, and your daughter will be healed this very hour." Now, this is one of the most jarring stories in the Newer Testament for me. And I, like many of you, grew up with an image of Jesus as being kind and caring and nice to people who others were not nice to. And this doesn't really fit with that image of Jesus. So the way I've usually heard this story interpreted is that people kind of just jump over all the nasty parts and get to the healing part. Well, to Matthew and Mark's credit, they recount this story anyway that doesn't make Jesus look very good. And it is one of the best examples in the Newer Testament that our understanding and knowledge about Jesus, about God, about being Christians, just about being good human beings, sometimes needs to be stretched from our easy answers that we want to apply to our spiritual journey. But this story, think about it. If you were to hear this story and someone else's name was placed into the role of Jesus, we would be outraged that this woman was so psychologically abused by a man. As a result, we have heard all sorts of explanations for why Jesus couldn't have possibly treated this woman the way both gospel writers portray it. I mean, there must be some test Jesus was giving her, or maybe they were speaking in code so that those around them wouldn't know what was happening. I mean, the very idea that Jesus could be so abusive to this vulnerable human being is unthinkable. I mean, she was a woman, she was a foreigner, she was poor, she was without any evidence of a husband, and she was her child's only resource. Now just think about those power dynamics for just a moment. And from what we are told in this story, she was polite, she was reserved in her request, knowing she was in a position where she could be physically hurt or worse. And I have learned that's what desperation does to people who have run out of options. So I have to tell you, this encounter really stumps me. And when I get stumped, it is a really good sign that something about my assumptions need attention. What assumptions about Jesus, God, are challenged by this encounter that goes so badly, but eventually gets resolved? And thank God somebody made sure that this story made it into the Bible. I mean, think about it. It could have been so easy for this part of the manuscript to mysteriously be omitted. But it wasn't. Both Mark and Matthew's Gospel included. So there's something here that is important. So maybe this story is here to challenge our assumptions of Jesus. Could he have possibly been like all of us? So used to his moments of privilege that he didn't know when he was abusing it? But of course some will say, this is Jesus we're talking about. He wasn't rich, so it can't be that kind of privilege. No, he was a peasant too. But he was also a man in a patriarchal culture. Did he have unexplored privilege issues that needed work? But Jesus was the chosen of God, we say. Yes, he was. And it took him a lifetime to figure out just exactly what that meant. Just like it does for us. Was this a moment when the teacher needed to learn a lesson? And does it make him any less the chosen of God that he didn't get it right always? We have some assumptions, don't we? And let's not leave this passage without appreciating this impoverished immigrant single mother who had the courage to do what it took to care for her child. Has this story made us focus in a place we aren't usually thinking about focusing? This was a pretty amazing example for someone the gospel calls all of us to serve, to ask for the care that we say we offer. Do we ever think about how hard it is to ask for help? For all the reasons we see in this story. So I have to tell you, this passage of Scripture is a stumper. But I hope it has given you something to think about. It certainly has for me. So maybe you saw something in this encounter that I have missed. So I'm going to ask you to send it to me. And I'll add it to this. I'll add your voice to this Stump the Pastor conversation. So we'll see you next time. Well, thanks, Dar, for sending me your question. This is actually the first one that I think I've really actually been stumped on. You may not agree with all my answers to all the other ones, but I don't have an answer to this one. So thanks for sending it to us and getting all of us thinking about this passage of Scripture and about how we think about Jesus. See you next time on Stump the Pastor.